All right. Well, welcome everyone. I hope everyone is having a great week so far. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera. I would invite you, if you feel comfortable in doing so, to go ahead and turn on your camera as well. Sometimes it's good to see our faces as we go through our training workshops together. I know I certainly like to see other people than just me. So I would invite you to please go ahead if you would like to do that. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, then that's okay too. You don't have to. It's just a thing. I did put the agenda for today as well as the resource documents in the chat for you. I'm going to go ahead for those of you who may have come in just a little bit later. I'm going to copy those and I'm going to paste them right back in the chat for you so you can have that too. Fantastic. All right, good deal. I would also invite you today, if you have a sandbox course with some people in it, some test students or whatever, to go ahead and log into your instance at regent.instructure.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Regent.instructure.com. That should take you to your Regent login page, which will allow you then to log into your Canvas account. So please go ahead and do that. Rachel is with us today. I want to give a big shout out to her and her team for inviting me to come be with you all today. I really appreciate it. I was with you guys last week, and I do recognize some of your names, and some of you are maybe a little new. I don't know if y'all were here last week, but I know it's a crazy busy time for you all at your school with graduation and the end of a semester and the starting if you have a summer term, those kinds of things that are happening. But it's always a good time to play around in Canvas. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself to you. How about that? My name is Matt Miller, and I'm a learning specialist here at Instructure. I have been with the company now for one full year. As of April 25th is my first anniversary with Instructure. However, I've been using Canvas for a little over 6 years now. I started way back almost 30 years ago here in the state of Texas, first at McLennan Community College in Waco, Texas. And then in the year 2000, I was hired at Navarro College, where I spent the next 21 years working. If you all saw the Netflix docuseries Cheer, then you're probably familiar with Navarro College. It's a very small school just below the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. In all of my roles, I was sort of they called me the tech evangelist. I was sort of the guy who helped with instructional technology, distance learning, any kind of instructional support was my role at those schools. We actually used Blackboard for about 15 years at Navarro before we made our switch over to Canvas, and it turned out to be a really good move for us, not only in the ease of use, but also in some of the tools and features that I'm going to show you today that I hope will be helpful to you as well. Many of our faculty would comment many times after we made our transition of how easy it was to use Canvas, and I hope you're going to find that to be the same thing. I mean, all learning management systems sort of do the same kind of thing with regard to, placing files and information and content and testing and discussions and announcements, all of those things, grade books, all of those things you can find in any learning management system. But I do hope that you'll find Canvas to be a little bit easier for you to use. I think I mentioned in my last training with you guys as well, I do have a connection to Virginia Beach. I actually went to high school there at Floyd E. Kellum High School. I'm a proud graduate back in the 1980 maybe something. At any rate, but I lived there for pretty much my whole high school career. I was there. And so I do have a lot of fond memories. I actually haven't been back to Virginia Beach since the early 1990s. And so we do have some of our team that's based out of Virginia Beach. And so they tell me how much it's changed, since then. I saw some of the changes, particularly if you drive down Holland Road, how much more grown up it is now than it used to be. It used to be a bunch of horse farms and things like that. But my understanding, it has been sort of developed, I should say. So I imagine that's probably the case. But good deal. I'm glad you guys are with me today as well. So we got recordings. I do have a chat there. If you do have questions during our session, I would invite you to be sure and you can chat them to me as we go through today, as well as if you just want to open that microphone up and just ask away, we can certainly do that too. We've got about 36 people in the class today, but we've got some, I do like to try to make sure that I answer your questions as best as I can in the time that we have available. The first question that we do have is, where are the recordings going? So those recordings go onto what's called a training coordination document. Looks kind of like this. It basically has all of our agendas, and I have a recording link that is added to that, and I send that to your team there at Regent, who will find a way to distribute it to you. But the recordings are being made available to you, will be made available to you at some point. However, that is chosen. If y'all have a training portal or some other means of getting it out there, then those recordings can be shared with you. Okay. I always mention that I live in a small town here in the state of Texas, about 1,000 people. If you can imagine a 12 city blocks by about 9 city blocks, that's sort of the size of my community. A train track runs right through the middle of my community. So if you listen very closely, my train is coming through. So I do have this noise canceling microphone, which hopefully helps a little bit with that. But at any rate, I always point that out. The trains don't come by very frequently, but you'll be able to see them there. So today's topic is group work and communication. Again, please, by all means, log into your Canvas account, and we'll talk about some of these things. The first thing we are going to cover is how to make groups out of your students in Canvas. And so groups are always one of those things that students sort of, particularly the introverted ones, I know I'm one of those, that when people mention groups and team building and icebreakers, my little inner introvert sort of goes, oh no, not this. But as you know, it's a kind of an important way of creating teamwork, collaboration in a class, particularly for various projects and things. It helps prepare them for the workforce later on, because, as you know, in the workforce, we do have to get along and work together as a team. So many times for our students, it's always a good way to sort of put people together and have them sort of solve problems, do things, different projects. We have some great training on project-based learning, where they take problems and issues within a certain community, and you can have students sort of become sort of the guides of how to solve those problems, and the professor becomes less the sage on the stage and more the guide on the side, as it were. And you'll find hopefully that is a useful way sometimes of accomplishing various projects. But yeah, we're going to show you how to create groups in your Canvas accounts. It's a very easy process. You have a lot of flexibility there. And also, once they are in groups, then how to kind of manage the group space. You do have an option to allow students to create their own groups if you want to in the class. And I know that sounds a little scary, because you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Allowing students to sort of team up on me or whatever. But you do have the ability then, once if the students are allowed to create a group in your class, you do have the ability, obviously, of full oversight. So you can go in and see what they're up to and making sure they're not conspiring some form of mutiny or whatever about that. In addition to that, I'm going to show you how you can create group assignments, how you can create group discussions for graded purposes, as well as collaborations. Now, remind me, at Regent, are y'all using Google or are y'all using Office 365? And we probably covered this already, but I have slept since then. Are y'all primarily Office 365 or Google?
Staff and faculty, we use Office 365, and students, we use Google.
Okay, interesting. All right, yeah, fantastic. All right, you can, using collaborations, you can leverage information from Google or Office 365 and enable students to collaborate, create documents and things like that collaboratively using that type of space. And so depending on what's turned on in your instance in Canvas, we can kind of walk through that. The good news is whether you use Office 365 or Google, the process is exactly the same in terms of how to create that in your course. But then we're also going to switch over and talk a little bit about communication in Canvas. Now, one of the things that I really liked, and one of the big selling points in Canvas for me, were the notification settings. Anything that you do in Canvas, students can be notified about. So it just saves you a little bit of time of reminding, for example, I change a due date on an assignment. And when I change that due date, I have to remember to go back and tell my students, oh, by the way, I changed that due date. Well, in Canvas, once you change a due date, students are automatically going to be emailed to their Regent email account that a due date has changed, and which one. So it does save you a little bit of time. If you posted an announcement, for an example, in Canvas, it will also automatically email them. So there's a number of things that will automatically notify students whenever you reach out to them or do changes within your course that they will automatically be notified about. Because you and your students all have your Regent email accounts already tied to Canvas, then it makes the notifications feature possible. And you can go in, and I'll show you quickly how you can go in and change your notification features. If, for example, I'm a faculty member and I do not wish to be notified every time every one of my students posts a discussion in the discussions, if I'm teaching 5 sections with 30 students in each, maybe I'm not really crazy about getting an email every time a student posts in discussions for those 5 classes. So I'll show you how you can sort of control that as well. It's already pretty much turned off for you as faculty, but there are some default settings you might want to be familiar with. The Canvas inbox is that messaging feature that we have in Canvas. Again, it's kind of neat because if I send you a message using the Canvas inbox, not only do you get the message in your Canvas inbox, you also get an email. So if a student tries to reach out to their professor by going out to the Canvas inbox and sending you a message, it will also come to your Regent email account. Now, here's the cool thing. If you just reply to the Canvas email, you've replied to the message. The same thing goes for students. If you send the students a message in the Canvas inbox, they're going to get that email. And as soon as they reply to that email, they've also replied to the message. So it sort of takes care of having to go to 2 different places to see if a student has responded, because you'll automatically get that as well. Probably one of my favorite features in the gradebook, and it's called Message Students Who. And this is where you can, in the gradebook, go out and message students who have met certain criteria, or maybe haven't met certain criteria for you in the gradebook. And we'll look a little bit at that too. And I'll also, with time permitting, also demo the Canvas student app. There is a teacher app and a student app for you. You can download both if you want to. Many of your students will probably want that app. You, as the professor, may or may not want the app, but there is a teacher app. If you go out to Google Play or the Apple Store, you can download those apps for free and tie them directly to your Regent account. Just by doing a quick search of Regent University, you'll be able to then log in using your credentials, and it will tie it to your account. That way, if you're standing in line at Farm Fresh or Food Lion or one of the other grocery store chains I remember of my youth, and you're answering student messages or reaching out to students or making announcements to your students while you're standing in line, you can do that, which is kind of neat as well. So some of the communication tools really, I think, help keep the students engaged, but also notified of what's happening in your course. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let's talk about group sets and groups in your class. So I'm going to invite you to go out to your Canvas account. Oops, excuse me. My mouse has like a little hair trigger on it. It's like every time I touch it, it wants to move on to another slide. So pardon me for that. I'm going to go out to my Canvas dashboard here. Go ahead and log in. And on my dashboard, I've got all of these demo courses sitting here. Oh, no more Farm Fresh. Oh, no. I imagine Gene Walters has passed away many years ago. I just remember that where you could get some Farm Fresh eggs and braid, or whatever, however you pronounced it. It was kind of funny. Wow, so that's sad. Okay, well, I remember we used to go there all the time. So I'm going to go into this course here. This is the course I was using in my last demo with you. I'm going to use it today also to show you how you can build groups and group sets in your course. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that for me. Now, before we get started creating groups in our class, I want to just mention to you that there is a way you can allow students to create their own groups. Now, this is purely up to you whether you decide to allow this or not. I do want to show you the settings that have to occur if you wish to allow them or disallow them to create their own groups, okay? So with that, the first thing that has to be satisfied for students to be able to create their own groups, but this by itself doesn't mean that they can create their own groups, and that is to make the people menu visible. Now, in your course menu over here, you see that certain items have like an I with a slash through it. That just simply means that this is not visible to students, that these menu items are not visible or accessible to your students. This is a good way to sort of control the size of your course menu, to control the navigation a little bit, because, in your courses, you might have, a home page that has navigation links on it and things like that. So remember, in order to hide or reveal the menu, you need to go down to your settings. You go into your course and go down to your settings menu, just like that. Hopefully my computer's being a little bit fast and frisky today. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And so to control navigation, remember you have, whenever you go into settings, it sort of lands on this course details tab. Over here is navigation. And so I want to click on the navigation tab, and remember that the navigation tab is also where you can reorder items on your menu, or you can hide menu items by dragging them down here below this little demarcation that says drag items here to hide them from students. You can also reveal items that may be hidden that you want your students to see by simply clicking and dragging them up to where you want your students to see them in that reveal menu there. So let's just say, for example, maybe I want to reorder this menu over here. Maybe I want home, syllabus, and then modules to be the three things. So I'm going to go ahead and move syllabus right up there to reorder it. If your people menu is currently hidden, you can drag it up to where it can be viewed. But remember, by doing this, it doesn't mean that students are going to be able to create their own groups just by doing this alone. All right. There's another feature that you have to enable in order for that to happen that I'm going to show you next. So if you want to reveal your people menu, that's perfectly okay. That doesn't mean they'll be able to create their own group. And you can reorder your menu, of course, as well. I always hide anything that I'm not going to be using. So just if I'm not going to use something, I just hide it. Once you've hidden, reordered, whatever you're going to do with your navigation menu, all you have to do is come down here and hit save. And when you do that, anything you've decided to be hidden will be hidden. Anything that you've reordered, now it's home, syllabus, and modules, has been reordered. And of course, I've allowed my people menu to be visible like it was before. So that is one of the features, one of the things that has to happen in order to allow students to create their own groups. The other thing that has to happen is still in the settings, this time under course details up here still. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of my course details tab until I see this tiny little link way down here called more options. You see that? So I'm going to click on more options. And when I do that, you're going to see all kinds of fun little features that you didn't know were there. Okay. The one that I want to show you, though, is this little checkbox right here. Let students organize their own groups. All right. So if you wish to allow them the ability to create their own groups, then you can choose that option. I'm going to show you how we're going to create groups, but if you want to let your students create their own as well, you can. But checking that, and of course, you always have to go down and choose update course details. For my money, I'm not going to let them create their own groups. All right, I'm going to keep them from doing that. So I just wanted to show you where that is, just in case you start seeing a bunch of groups up here and you're like, how are they doing that? Well, that's where they're doing it. This little setting was checked and the people menu was visible. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that that is unchecked. And it doesn't matter if the people menu is visible or not. I'm going to go ahead and click update course details. And now I've effectively not allowed my students to create their own groups. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to go out to your settings in your course. I want you to check that navigation. If you want to reveal your people menu, please by all means do that by going to the navigation tab. I also want you to go to your course settings and way down there to more options and either select or deselect that as well. I'm going to pop up a little poll here for hands-on activity. And I'm going to allow you a moment to kind of fiddle around in your Canvas account. If you are just watching today, just mark it on the poll there so I'll know when to move along. If you want to go ahead and mark when you're done on the account, please do that on the poll. Please do that too. And if you are just watching today, that's perfectly all right. There is nothing wrong with that. I'll pause here and ask if anyone has any questions. Is Food Lion still there? Okay. I remember there was one over near Green Run. That's where I used to go to more than any of them. And then I lived in kind of the Lynn Haven area. They're not too far from the old Lynn Haven Mall. Yeah, I was telling my wife I need to take her back over that direct. I still have some classmates and friends that still live in the area that I haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, that's a good question, Stephen. Why would you let them create their own groups? I guess if it's just kind of more of a self-guided thing, it's like I tell my class, okay, y'all, here's the project, y'all form into groups and go figure it out, and let them kind of decide on their own, their group membership and all that kind of stuff. They could do that. But when you do that again, you could think of cliques forming and things like that. Or you might say, okay, if y'all want to create a study group, where you have because what it does is it creates their own little group space that we're going to show you in a moment. So they have a way to share things with each other and collaborate and things like that. So, I could see kind of on a in kind of a limited way that I might allow students to create that if it's a particular class that maybe is students, there's a lot of difficulty and maybe they need to create a little learning community to sort of teach each other stuff. Yeah, so this might keep some students if they're not as active. That's right. Yeah, that's true, TJ. So uh, uh, Tamitha, that's very true. Yeah, if you have students that are kind of a little bit sheepish, they may not jump on a group there. But yeah, if you create the group discussions, yeah, you can. That sort of does the same purpose. But yeah, and honestly, like I said, the only difference is who's controlling the creation of the groups. And so I'm going to show you how we're going to create groups, and then you can choose to allow students to sign up for their own groups, or you can also create it to where you can establish the group membership at random. And so I'll show you how that can happen too. But yeah, the purpose is very much the same. It's creating kind of a collaborative environment for your students. Looks like most of you are there. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to kind of poke around. Good question, Stephen. Is Canvas for students expecting to have more leeway than they had in Blackboard? It really depends. I mean, by leeway, are you talking about more control over certain things in the course? More freedom or control? Not necessarily. I mean, you establish the, kind of what the expectations are in the class. When we talk about like the notification features and some of the things like that as well, I mean, are students more informed of what's happening in their classes? Absolutely. But as far as control of the classroom environment, you pretty much control that. You do have the ability to allow a little bit of more flexibility if you choose to, but that's something that you don't necessarily have to grant them either. Yeah, so you only have one person. You're saying, yes. So, Demitha, that's a good question there. Yeah, it's going to be a little hard to create groups of people whenever you only have like one student in your sandbox. So you might be watching maybe a little more about what I'm doing here than actually creating your own at this point. You can still create the groups if you want to, but you just won't have any membership really in there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. Looks like most of you have completed that as well. I did see earlier in the chat too that Rachel has kind of shared where the information is or actually Amberly has shared some of the information that where the recordings are in the chats. If you go back to the chat, you can see that too. We may post that toward the end too if you need to know where that is. All right, so that's how students would be able to create their own group if you allow them to or disallow them to. Okay. I want to go back to my people menu here. And in this particular course, I just have a few students. I don't have a lot in here, but I do have a few students in here. So if I wanted to create a group, the first thing that I have to do is create what's called a group set. So you'll notice that when I go to my people menu, I can see who my students are. I can see who the teachers are in the class, and I can see all of my students here. I will say that whenever you're creating groups in Canvas, a couple of considerations, or one main consideration when you're creating your groups is how many students are in your group and how many students do you want in a particular group, okay? There is sort of that Goldilocks principle of sort of that sweet spot of having just the right membership, right? Too few members, you might have only 2 students in two groups. What happens if one of those students drops? Okay, or something happens and they drop the class. Well, now you've got an individual assignment instead of a group assignment if you only have one person in there. The other thing is if you have too many members. Now, I worked in higher ed, so I know the death by committee. I know that very well. As a dean, I had to find my different committees. I had an online committee when I first started that had like 30 members on it, different faculty representatives and different parts of campus and everything else, and nothing got done because there was just way too many people, too many hands in the till, as it were. So I decided to make my committee a lot leaner and meaner. So I only had about 6 people on the committee with different faculty representation, with a couple of administrators on there as well. And that could be taken to the faculty senate. I just found that to be a much easier way to get people together and to get things done, was to make it a little smaller. Too small and you run the risk of students leaving the group or whatever. Too many and nothing gets done, and it's really hard to discern who's done the work and who hasn't. So there is that little sweet spot, somewhere between 3 and 4 people, I think, per group. And so you can decide, based on the number of students that you have, how many people you would like in each of your groups. Okay. Another thing to consider is the fluidity of enrollments right up at the first part of the semester. I know where I worked, students were adding and dropping up into the first week of class. And so if I created my groups too early, you might have, students who left the class or students who are joining the class and whatever. So again, finding that little sweet time, maybe after the first week when everything's sort of settled in for the semester, to be able to add that as well. So in your people menu, you'll notice that up in the upper right-hand side of the screen, there's what's called the group set. I want you to think of group set as a particular activity or assignment, okay, or a particular project. You can have as many group sets in your class comprising as many groups as you want. So if I have a research assignment in this particular class, I could create a group set for the research project, but maybe I have a community presentation project or some other type of thing that I want with a whole different set of group, a whole different group set with different membership in each group. So you can have as many as you want. You can mix and match however you wish to. I'm just going to show you one today, but just know that you do have that flexibility. So to create a group set, I'm going to click plus group set, just like that. And it's going to ask me to give my group set a name. Here, I'm just going to probably name it whatever the project that I'm have them working on. I'm going to name it that, but I want to be a little bit more specific. Assuming that students are taking more than just you as the professor, more than just your one class. If they were in several classes, if they're taking 5 classes, 4 or 5 classes this semester, and each professor is creating groups, and I just called this group project or whatever. Well, the student could get really confused if all the professors name their projects group projects. And so in doing that, I want to be a little bit more specific, right? So let's just say this is an English literature class or something like that. So I could put Eng 101, group project or whatever. I could type it, whatever the class name is or whatever I wanted to do there. I could say, it's this, 23 fall English 101 group project, however you want to name it. Okay. And that'll just help my students be able to recognize it whenever they go out to find their groups, to say, this is the one from the English class with Professor Miller. All right. So that's just the naming convention is kind of your, just make it a little bit specific. So when a student goes out there, I'll show you an example in a moment whenever we show you from the student's angle what they see and how helpful that can be. The other thing is that you can choose to allow self sign up. So when you give the students the option to sign up, you can, and by the way, this required groups to be in the same section. You're going to see that a couple of times. Canvas has what's called, has a feature called cross listing. That you may or may not be using, all right? But let's just say, for example, I'm teaching 5 sections of English literature this next semester. And each of the sections has, 20, 30 students in there, whatever, all right? Canvas allows me to create take one of my course sections with students in it, and I can sort of create a parent section of that course. So I can go ahead and have that course, all built out with everything, all the different assignments and different modules and all the different things in there. And then what it allows me to do is to cross list it with the other 4 sections. So my other 4 sections would be empty, but I could cross list them using a process in Canvas. And what that would do is basically allow me to work out of one section, but all of my students in all 5 sections will be a part of it. So it allows me to aggregate all the different course sections under one sort of course. So that way, when I make a change in one course, I don't have to go in and make it in the other 4 sections. Does that make sense? So that is a feature that Canvas does provide. And it is one of those that it is a little tricky, that does take a little bit of knowledge about what you're doing whenever you're creating cross listing. So once you figure it out, it's pretty easy, but it is something you can do. So what this feature is asking us to say, it's basically saying that if I have cross listed all 5 of my sections and I'm creating groups in this one master section here, then I could also require that any of the group members, they have to be sort of in the same section. So if I'm teaching a Monday, Wednesday, 8 o'clock class and a 8 a.m. class, and I'm teaching a Tuesday, Thursday, 10 to 11, 20 class or whatever, then I could require membership to be in whatever section that they belong to. So they have to be in the same one. And that's allowing self-sign-up, so students to be able to choose the groups here. Now, what if I don't want to? What if I want to let Canvas just decide to for my students using the wheel of destiny to decide what my group membership is going to comprise of? I could take away self-sign-up ability, and then I can go down to group structure, and I can either split my students by number of groups. So I can define how many groups are going to be in my class. And generally, I would be thinking about how many students I have and how many students I want in each group. And then I would just discern, well, how many groups I need in order for that to occur. I can also tell Canvas to split by numbers of students. So if I've got 10 students in my class and I wanted there to be 3 students per, then it would basically create 3 groups. One of them would have 4 students because 10 is an odd number in that regard, or with the number of groups that I have there with mathematically. So it'd be, group 1, group 2, and group 3, and then all of them would have 3 students, except for group 3 would have 4 students, right? So Canvas will sort of parse up your students depending on, okay? I'm going to split by number of groups. And again, I'm just going to define how many groups I want. So in this class, I want 3 groups. Now, I know that I have a very small class. So, my students are only going to have a couple of students per group. And that's, again, going back to what I said earlier, probably not the best practice since, one student could leave a class and then leave that person by themselves in the group. Again, you can require they be in the same section if you're cross-listing, okay? And then I can automatically assign a group leader. Now, the group leader is more or less a ceremonial role, okay? They sort of kind of serve as the point of contact for the group, okay? However, that does have the ability, the group leader does have the ability to change the name of the group, for example. If they y'all wanted to give them their own team name or something like that, then the group leader would have the ability to do that. The reason I say it's kind of a ceremonial role is because if I have a group leader and I've got 2 other people in the group and I give them all an assignment, any member of that group can submit the assignment on behalf of the whole group. All right. Not only that, any member of the group can also add announcements in their group spaces, I'll show you, or discussion topics or files and things like that. So any member of the group has a lot of ability within the group to do that. So the group leader essentially has some very limited powers, one of which they can change the name of the group. And I believe they can control group membership as well to some limited capabilities as well. We'll look at that too. You can set the first member, whatever Canvas selects as the first member to join the group as the leader, or you can just randomly allow Canvas to pick a leader for that group. Now, once you've created a group leader, you can always change that too. As the teacher, as I've said before, as the professor, you have full control over the over that. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I've given my group a name. I've split my group. I've chosen to split by number of groups, and I've defined the number of groups that I want in this class. I've automatically assigned a group leader, and I'm just going to select some random student as the group leader for each group. That's it. And I'm going to hit save. Now Canvas is going to think on it for a moment. Just for a moment. And then Canvas is going to create my groups. You can see now that in my people menu that I have everyone in the class, but notice that I've got a new tab up here called my 23FA English 101 group project. When I click on that, notice that I have 3 groups. This little avatar with the name next to it identifies the group leader. I can see how many students I have per group right here. And if you'll notice, I can click on this little down arrow next to each group, and I can see who my members are for each of these groups here, just like that. If I want to move membership, let's just say, oh, thank you. Yeah, I work for a young company, Ashley. Ashley says, I love your students. I work for a very young, we wear t-shirts to work, okay? I mean, I'm not used to this, but at any rate, yeah, these are all Marvel characters, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I recognize, well, he's not in this class, but Bruce Banner, who is the Hulk, of course, but some of these others, I'm not sure. I think that's a Doctor Strange or whomever. I had to kind of Google a few of them because I didn't know who they were. I'll be honest, I'm an old person. And of course, I've added my own students here as well. But let's just say, for example, Loki Odinson here has decided, you know what, I don't want to be in a group with a bunch of Matts. All right, I don't blame you. I've petitioned to my professor to please change me out of this group and into another group. As the professor, you can move group members around if you want to. Now, here's a caveat on that. Please do not do that if students have already submitted things as a group for grades. This can mess up their grading, all right? So my recommendation is to give them a little bit of a breathing time to kind of figure that out, but then say, okay, look, after this certain date, no more, before the first assignment is due or whatever, there's no more movement. You're going to like the group that you live with, y'all are stuck together essentially. But just be really careful about that, because, if you have a situation where you've already started adding group assignments and students have already started submitting things or whatever, and the student says, well, I want to be in another group. If you move them, it can mess up their grading. All right. So just remember that. The other thing is that you might have a situation where, maybe Steven's like, look, I don't want to be the group leader. Can you please take that away from me? I don't want that responsibility. We'd rather Pepper to be the group leader. You certainly can. So if you click in the 3 dots next to the person, you'll notice that you can set them as leader instead, which is mostly ceremonial, like I said, but it is sort of a thing that you can change or control. Now, what I was mentioning earlier is that if you created your groups too prematurely, and I'll just put Stephen out for just a moment, when students are added to your course, let's say I have my groups established, and then Stephen here joins the course after the fact, okay? If that happens, then you'll see Stephen or any other students that have added to the course as unassigned. And then what you can do is manually assign them the group that you want them to be in. Does that make sense? Just by clicking and dragging them into a group. So again, if you do create your groups and you do have someone join your class late, they will appear over here and you can just move them into whatever group you want to kind of help shake that out a little bit. All right, so what I want you to do now is to go out and create your very own group set. You can, if you don't have any students in there, it's fine. You can just identify the number of groups if you want to and create that group space. It should allow you at least to do that, I think. I'm going to go ahead and reset our poll real quick and give you an opportunity to kind of play around with adding a group set and also answer any questions that you might have. Another interesting story about Virginia Beach. I was walking along the boardwalk one time with a friend of mine. Oh, let's see. So these groups are different from discussion groups. Yes, in a way they are, Stephen. So yeah, we're going to cover discussions in a moment. So once you have your groups created, then of course you can add group discussions and group assignments and things. I'm creating the group from the people menu. Okay. However, I could bypass coming here first. I could create a group discussion and create my group set there. And so, again, I'll show you how that's done, but there's a couple of ways to create groups in Canvas, but basically it means the same thing. And we'll show you how that's done. Hope that answers your question. Well, it'll make sense in a minute whenever we do the discussions and stuff. Yeah, so we're walking along and all of a sudden this car pulls up. No, Stephen, I'm here for you guys. I don't mean to digress. Anyway, a car pulls up and this guy says hello to us. And then a friend of mine, he just totally freezes, like totally starstruck or whatever. And he left. And I was like, what's going on? What's the matter? And he goes, that was Tony Hawk, who was a skater, that was there at Mount Trashmore, I guess. He was there for doing something for some event there. So anyway, I didn't know who Tony Hawk was. I was not a very cool person, but my friend was completely bowled over. No, I just sharing some stuff with you. Any other questions right up? Tony Tony Hawk, apparently he's some famous skater who's about my age now, unfortunately. All right. Looks like a few y'all, I'm going to give y'all a little more time to kind of play around with that. Any other questions so far? Oh, you have a pair of shoes. Oh, wow. I mean, I know who he is now. I see his commercials for Geritol or whatever he's plugging these days. So, a lot of fond memories. And my understanding is Kellam High School is a completely new high school now. The one I went to was probably one of the oldest in the city. Wasn't air conditioned in most areas, I think. All right, let's do about another 30 seconds or so. Give y'all a little time to. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. Quite there. You can continue on as I move along here. So once you have the groups established, if you have a whole bunch of other people join the class late, you can add more groups to the groups that you already have. So you can do that manually right up here. So if I were to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and name this 23 FA English 101, sorry, group project 4, for example. Notice that it's going to add a group project 4. Notice I've numbered them also, by the way. So there's nobody in this group, but I could, if I had a whole bunch of students that added, I could just pop them straight into that group there, or I can move the membership around and create 4 groups if I want to. So you can create additional groups once you have these as well. Absolutely, yeah, Stephen. So these will be for anything. You can use them just as a way to divide your class. You don't have to give them any graded assignments or anything if you don't want to. You can just let them create their own space, as we kind of initially discovered or initially talked about, by allowing them to create their own groups. Or you can just say, look, you guys are going to be work groups together, just to kind of separate my very large class into smaller learning unit or learning groups or whatever. I can do that and not assign them a single graded object item if I don't want to. But of course, it does set the stage to allow me to create gradable items too. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of project 4 since I don't need it. So I'm going to go ahead and over to the 3 over here. I can click delete and get rid of that 4th group there if I want to, but just know that you can add that as well. Another thing that you can do as the professor is, if you'll notice, if I go over to the right-hand side and click those 3 dots there for each group has their own group homepage, okay? Like that. Yeah, they're not attached in the Grade Center. It does create a little section, and I'll show you in a moment. I can go and create and go to each group's homepage. So I'm going to go visit this particular group's homepage by choosing the 3 dots and clicking on Visit Group Homepage. When I do this, and again, this is something you as the professor has, you can edit the group if you want to. You can change the group name here or whatever. You can add an announcement for your students if you want to create an announcement just for this group project. You'll notice up here that I can flip and toggle between group 1, 2, and 3, and each group has their own little universe in Canvas. Okay, go to group 1. But the point I wanted to make here is that even though there is a group leader assigned to each group, in this particular group space, when students go out here, they're members of the group, and in this particular group 1, I have 2 students, Maddie McMiller and Matt Student, in this particular group here, that each of those students has a way to create announcements. And it doesn't matter if they're the leader or not. Anyone in the group can create an announcement just for that group. They can create pages. So if you wanted to give them the opportunity to create pages, maybe as part of an assignment, to create their own wiki pages, you can do that too. We showed you the people menu there. They have the ability to create their own discussions among each other. They can do that. Now, I do want to make a very clear distinction here. As the professor, I can also add a discussion just for this group. However, by adding the discussion within their group homepage, I cannot make it graded. I'm going to show you how you can make graded discussions, but I have to do that not in the group page here. All right. So if I were to go to discussions now and try to add a discussion, say I want group 1 to talk about this topic, notice that there is no way to make it graded here. All right. So this is only for discussion purposes. However, I'm going to show you in a moment how we can create group discussions and then how we can assign them to each individual group or to all the groups with the same topic, however you wish to do that. That is graded. I'm going to show you where to do that. The point is you do not do that here, okay? The group page also has, for each member of the group, the ability to upload files. As a professor, you can upload files for this particular group as well, okay? They can upload their own files. So if you have an article or something, you're like, this might help them with this project, excuse me, I can go ahead and upload some files from them. So they can create their own little file library or share files here, however they want to. Now, remind me at Regent, are you guys using Zoom or Teams primarily for communication?
No.
Okay. So Canvas has Big Blue Button, right? And it's sort of the, I call it the poor man's Zoom. Okay, it's a conferencing feature. Now, Rachel, I think, do y'all have it turned off in your instance?
No, it's on, but
It is on.
Mainly using Zoom though.
Yeah. So Zoom, if I had a choice, I'd choose Zoom, and there's 2 reasons why. Big Blue Button is a conferencing feature that allows you to do some live face-to-face conferencing. You can give it a name there. You can even record it. There's things like that. And it does create sort of a, this is my group 1 I'll call it my group 1 conference. There we are. I can choose the duration for it. I can enable recording. I can also take away the time limit. I can put a waiting room just like I can for Zoom, and so on. And I can describe it. And when I create that conference, then only members in group 1 here, or myself, if they want me to be invited along here as well, in this particular conference, let me let it save real quick. We can come out here to our group homepage, and we can come out here and start this conference here. And it's going to kind of sort of look like, actually, it reminds me more of Adobe Connect, if you guys remember that tool, but it allows me to use a microphone. I've got, go ahead and allow that. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. There we go. And also, you've got a public chat over here, so we can chat just to members of this group here. I have my membership over here. We have some notes if we want to make a little agenda. We can share our webcam if we wanted to, if it'll let me do this. Let's see. There we go. I can start sharing my webcam here. Hello, everyone. I can share my screen if I want to down here. If I want to choose my screen, I can upload presentations, polls, all of that good stuff. I can start recording. I even have the ability to have like a little whiteboard here if I wanted to use it for that. And so it works kind of like Zoom or Teams in that respect. A couple of negatives though, okay? And it's good for like conferencing. Let's say you wanted to record, okay? The recording's only going to last for 2 weeks. So it's not a long-term thing. So that's what shies a lot of people away from it, is like, okay, it's only going to last for a couple of weeks. Why bother? So it's not really a good tool for like long-term recording storage, if you will. It is meant for like short-term conferencing. So if Zoom wasn't working or Teams wasn't working, we could rely on this as a means for the teammates to communicate with each other, particularly if they're geographically separated, things like that might help them to create sort of that environment. The other point is that if you're using Big Blue Button as a class, we'll leave that site there. If you're using it as a class there, it only allows only like 20 members concurrently. I think it's kind of limited in how many members you can have, whereas I think in Zoom, you can have a couple of hundreds as well. I knew there's always that question, Amberly, and that's a good question. Is there a download option? Can I download the recording before it disappears? Unfortunately, no. So that's like strike 3, right? So unfortunately, you can't download the recording. There is like a Big Blue Button premium kind of thing that allows you a few more bells and whistles, but unfortunately, it's not. There's a lot of limitations. When the pandemic first hit, we did not have Zoom. We had Teams on a limited basis. For me, if I had to kind of think of the 3 and what my priority would be, Zoom is like number 1. It's the easiest interface to use. It's, you can share links and recordings and do stuff for that. Teams is also pretty good, but it's also a little convoluted because of all the other little bells and whistles that it has. And to me, Big Blue Button just has a lot of limitations, but in a pinch, any port in a storm, or whatever, if I had to meet with somebody very quickly, then I could use that. And so it is what it is, I guess is the term, right?
Hello, Matt.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm glad you showed this part. Just want to tell my colleagues too, I had the pleasure of piloting this last semester. So one of my groups found a Big Blue Button that I didn't even know about, and I thought it was turned off based on how it looks on our screen. But once they got into their groups, they were able to find it. So I just wanted to throw that out. So it really wasn't turned off. I didn't mind it. It's just I didn't know enough about it. They were asking me questions. So.
Yeah, that's the other part too. It's always good to know about those features that students are using, because faculty, y'all are kind of the tip of the spear. You're the first one that students will come to for questions about Canvas, about everything under the sun. And so yeah. So well, thank you for that, Darwin. That's a very good point. I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. In addition to that, groups can also create their own collaborations, okay? So I want to show you what that looks like from a student's perspective, and then to kind of define what collaborations are as well as we kind of go through that. To do that, I'm actually going to go into, I'm going to become Maddie McMiller for a minute. And this is Maddie McMiller's here in group 1. I'm going to switch over to my Maddie McMiller profile. Looks like Maddie was involved in something here. Let me see if I can log back in. All right. So I'm a student now. Now, for a student to get into their groups, there's a couple of places they can go. All right. The first place is probably the easiest place. Is you'll notice if a student has been added to a group, the first thing you're going to see on the student's global navigation menu, which is this menu over here on the left, excuse me, that there is this groups menu item now. And when I go out here, you can see that Mr. McMiller is pretty busy. He's got a lot of classes that he's in, several English classes, foundation leadership, whatever. So again, going back to my original concept of making sure that, you name it something specific. If this is said group project, I would have group project all the way down here doing stuff. So having this makes it easier for me to identify. So I can go to my group homepage by going right here. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. The other way that I can get in there is if I go into my class itself here. If my people menu is visible, okay. If my people menu is visible here, it's going to take a moment for it to do its thing. If I go into my groups up here, you'll notice that there are the 3 groups. I can see the membership in all the other groups as well as my own. Notice that there is a padlock here that unless I'm invited to join, I cannot go into their group 2's project or group 3's project homepage. Okay. However, I can, because I'm part of group 1, I can go and visit here. So again, you can go to groups and go there, or you can go visit right here. All right. Once I'm in my group homepage over here, as I mentioned earlier, and I can't remember if Maddie is the leader or not, but even if I'm not the leader, I can create announcements. I can create wiki pages and things like that. I can create discussions so we can discuss things. I can add files and folders and things here to the library. So any group member can do that. I can also create a conference, a Big Blue Button conference, if we wanted to meet, kind of on the fly or whatever. And I can also create what's called collaborations. Now, collaborations, if you have Office 365 or Google turned on in your instance, this allows students to create. And by the way, you can do it in your class as well. But let's just say, for example, we have a written project to put together, my group members and I. And at Regent, we are using Google as sort of our main tool, right? And by the way, if this was Office 365, it works the same exact way. So if I go up to collaborations, I can go up here. It's going to say getting started with collaborations. I can come up here to the plus collaboration and notice, because in my particular instance, I have both turned on. However, Maddie McMiller only has a Google account, so they have to have an account in order to do this. So I'm going to choose Google Drive here. And what I can effectively do is, just for my group project 1, just for my members here, I can choose to create a document, a spreadsheet, or a presentation. So I'm going to create a Google document, and maybe this is our, our group 1 project assignment. I can add my teammate as my co-conspirator, collaborator here. And then I can click submit. Now, when I do this, it's going to create a space right here in the collaborations area. And what this is going to do is it's going to tie me directly to an empty Google Doc. It's going to ask, make me authorize it. Probably give me an error message. There it is. Okay, so now you can see I've got a Google Doc here. Okay. I can start creating my document here. Now, the cool thing is that whoever else is in my group, they can come out here and we can all work on the same document here together. Okay, so we can crowdsource this research paper. I can see in real time who else joined me up here. Okay, and we could actually come in together and work on this document, this one document here. If we were to go to our own Google Drives, we would see it there. But the easiest way to get to it is if I come out here to my group home, our group homepage, go down to collaborations there and choose our assignment here. And it's going to take me back to that document. It gives me those little funky little errors there. And we can pick up right where we left off. Yes, Amberly, good question. If they're unable to create their own, can we create one for them? Yes, you can. Okay. You can create one for them as well in their group space to allow them to do that. All right. So just for giggles here, let me find my drive here. And let's just say I've got a document here that I want to use. Let's just say I want this document as sort of my, there's an easier way to do that. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to make it part of our group project here. Okay. Sorry. All right. So we're done with our assignment. In just a moment, we'll use that as a means to upload it. Okay. So I'll just show you how that works. But having it to work on it together is just another little way of allowing that to happen. So again, the students have their own group space. They can create collaborations. They want to work on things. This is really good. I mean, we had this issue come up at my school. I had a physics professor that hounded me for years on how can we create sort of a running spreadsheet of calculations and things for lab assignments and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until we hit upon collaborations that became the means of doing that. Okay. Now, the question that I just had was, can you create collaborations for your students? And the answer is yes. So I'm going to go back in as my teacher account here. I'm going to go back out here to my main course. And it's going to be slow for a minute again. Any questions while that's coming up, by the way? So far, so good. Here we go. So I'm going to go to my assignments menu here. Question is, can you enable or disable big blue button collaborations from the group home pages? That has to be done at the admin level. Yeah, but I think you can. Yeah. I mean, I know you can. But that is an administrative feature there. In your course, if you wanted to create a collaboration, instead of having to go to a group homepage or whatever, but maybe the fly. Maybe you have no groups created in this course, but you want 3 students to work on a particular assignment together. All right. So this is kind of just forget everything we've talked about groups so far. You do have the ability to create collaborations if you have the collaboration menu visible. You can see I'm going to have a couple of examples out here as well, like for a makeup assignment or maybe a small team project or something like that. I can come out here and create an Office 365 or a Google Drive assignment. And it's going to ask me to, give it a name just like we did before. It's thinking. If it was a presentation, a spreadsheet, or a document, again, or if it's Office 365, it's, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. It's pretty much the options that you have. And then I can call this letter, this is our English 101, special assignment. Okay. And then down here, notice that I can choose from my entire student membership here. Okay. That I can add various students. So these 4 students are going to work on this special assignment or whatever. And I can submit that. And then only these 4 students then would be able to go in and work on that assignment. Now, I don't think my personal account has, maybe it will, we'll see. It's going to make it authorized, okay? But the cool thing is that as the professor, I can come in here and see what they're up to. Okay. Yeah, well, that's fine. There it is. So I can see what they're working on. So if Maddie McMiller comes out here, where is he? Up here. All right. So Maddie McMiller goes out there and like, okay, what's shaking with my assignments course? I come out here to collaborations. I can only see the ones that I've been added to. There's that special assignment. It's going to do its little log me in things. So I can say, okay, here is the beginning of this special assignment or whatever. I can look up here and see that my professor's in here with me. You see that? I can go back now, get out of this. I can go back now as the professor and I can see what the student is doing. So if I get out of it just real quick, go back to my special assignment here. I can see what the student has written in real time. Okay. Yeah. So unfortunately, Regretta, I can show you the teacher side of how to do it in Office 365. Unfortunately, I can't show you the student side because I don't have a student with an Office 365 account. So the same thing does work. If I were to create a collaboration and create Office 365 instead of that, it's the same process. It's the same principle. So if I go out here to that, it's going to ask me if I want to add a Word, Excel, or PowerPoint presentation. Eventually, it's going to spin for a second. Okay. Same principle, right? So I'm going to call it, this is the Office 365 special assignment. Again, I don't have a student with Office 365, unfortunately, so I can't show you the full thing here. I can describe the assignment here, and then I can add my collaborators, okay, whoever they are. And then the same as being the teacher, the same as last time, I can, as the professor, I can go out here and see what they're up to. And it'll take me into a blank Word document then, that as my students go out there and start adding things, I will be able to also dip in every now and then and see what they're up to. So even without creating groups, you can still create collaborative type experiences for your students. And so in a way, you can kind of just create groups on the fly by just adding various collaborations and then just putting your membership in there, okay? But I want to go back to groups now and just kind of talk, oops, sorry about that. I want to go back to groups now and talk a little bit about how we can add assignments and discussions. So if we want to add some graded activities for our groups, we can do that too. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go first, we'll do discussions first. So I'm going to go to discussions here. And with discussions, you can add discussions. And remember, if I were to go to their group page and start adding discussions there, I cannot make them graded, okay? However, if I go to my discussions menu in my course and go up to plus discussion, I can call this my, Regent group discussion. And in the instructions, I can put the instructions there, or the prompt, right? The writing prompt or whatever. Now, I want to point out to you that there's two ways of thinking about discussions. The same thing as there's two ways of thinking about assignments. If I want everyone, all groups, to have the same prompt, so the same instructions, basically the same assignment, but they're going to discuss it as individual groups, then all I have to do is go down here to, and with your instructions, you have this wonderful rich content editor. I could have them watch a video or read an article, all that kind of good stuff. Down here, just like adding regular discussions, I want to make sure that I allow threaded replies. You can also choose to, they have to post their own answer before seeing their classmates' answers or responses. By choosing graded here is where you can assign a point value, okay? But then notice now you have the ability to choose to make it a group discussion. So when you click create as a group discussion, it's going to ask you to select a group set. Now this is going back to something Stephen was talking about earlier. If I don't have a group set already, I can create one right here on the fly. So in other words, if you just want to create a group for your class without having to go to people and adding that group set as we did to create our group, you could create a group right here just by creating a whole new group set right here, okay? However, since I've already created this group set of the 3 groups that I have, I can choose that as my group set, all right? And then, of course, down here, I can assign a due date and so on. Now, because I want to leave it as everyone, because everybody in the class, each of my 3 groups are going to get the same assignment or the same discussion assignment here. All right. So I'm going to click Save and Publish. And then as students start participating, I can go into each group right here and I can visit each of their homepage. But the idea here is that all 3 of these groups are going to have the same topic to discuss, but I can go into each one of them and see, for example, group 2, you're going to notice that in discussions, they have their own discussion here, and they can have their own individual discussion about this. All right. Now, what's trickier is, what if you want 3 separate topics for each group? So I have 3 groups and I want each of them to have their own topic. To do that is a little trickier, right? So to do that, it takes a little bit more effort. So I'm going to go back to my course. And what I could do, I'll have to create 3 different discussions, okay? 1 for each group. So let's just say here in my, and I'll do one, and then if you have any questions, we can go over it, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go back to my class here. And I'm going to go to discussions. And if I want to assign to just group 1, for example, I'm going to create a new discussion, just like I did before. And let's just call this my, Regent, so I'll see it easier, group 1 topic or whatever. And then I would have just a prompt or, a topic here just for group 1. Under the settings here, allowing threaded replies, all that, click graded and choose your point value. It's important that when you create the other 2 topics, thank you, Shannon. Then you create the other 2 topics that your point value is the same for each group. So let's just say I'm going to make this just strictly for group 1. I'm going to make it a group discussion, and I'm going to choose that group set, the one that we created here. Okay. But then down here under assign to, instead of everyone, I'm going to choose group 1. Notice how now that you have groups that you can assign things to just that group. So I'm going to choose that group and give them a due date. It's the same day or whatever. And now when I create that group, Maddie McMiller, for example, who happens to be in group 1, can go to the groups page or the discussions page. Oh, I can't go to the discussions page. I got to make that part of a module. Sorry. I thought I had a discussions out there though. That's weird. Oh, go to my group page. Sorry. Okay, and go to discussions. And now you can see that there's that group 1 discussion topic, group 1, right? Only for group 1. Groups 2 and 3 will not have that. Okay. So if I go to my group pages over here, go to my people, visit the group 1 homepage as the teacher, I can see under discussions the one that I created for group 1. However, if I go to group 2, I will see it here, but they will not. In fact, if I click on that, it should take it away. No, it won't. Okay, they will not have that though. Okay, because I only assigned it to group 1. Let me see if I can go in as a student. I'm going with Loki. I think Loki's in group 2. Yeah. 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 So there's no group 1 project for this for that student, for those students in group 2. Okay. Oh, thank you, Daniel. All right. Assignments work very much the same way. Let's go back to assignments. I want to go into there and show you a little bit about that. Any questions over creating a group discussion? You have 2 ways of doing it. You can do the same thing with assignments. You can assign specific assignments for group 1 and group 2. You make them group assignments, and then you assign to the due date to just that particular group. So here under my assignments demo, if I create a group assignment this time, you're going to see then that I can create a group assignment, and I can have a choice of whether or not I want to grade the assignment individually or if I want to grade it as a group. So this is kind of fun. So I'm going to go out here to my course if it will let me. Here we go. And this time I'm going to add an assignment. I'm just going to go up here to modules and drop in an assignment this way. Remember, you can create assignments. Oh, so let's see. Which one do you want to choose first? Actually, you know, I probably, Henry asked, which one do you recommend creating first, groups or the discussion first? I probably would think about groups beforehand. I would probably go ahead and create my group set in the people menu, like I showed you today, and then go back and then, you know, if I want to make it a group discussion, I can make it a group discussion. If I want it to be an entire class discussion, you don't have to make it a group discussion. So if I wanted to leave it as not a group assignment or a group discussion, that I could just leave that check box blank and just make it a full class assignment. But I like that flexibility there. And chances are, if I'm teaching a class, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. I'm probably going to only have one group set in my class, you know, with each group kind of their own little, you know, their own little thing or whatever. If I'm using groups, I'm probably not going to overcomplicate it with too many group sets, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to go out here and add an assignment. And because I don't have one, I'm going to go ahead and create one really quickly. And I'm just going to call this our Regent group assignment. All right. Maybe it's our project upload. This is where they're going to upload their final project. Add that as an item here. Go ahead and publish it real quick and move it up here so we can get to it a little bit easier. Now, whenever you add an assignment from the modules, remember it's just a placeholder at this point. So I have to go in here and actually do the settings. I could go to the assignments menu, create the assignment first, and then add it to the module if I want to, or I can create it in the module and then go back and flesh out the assignment. So I'm going to go out here to my assignment now, and I'm going to edit it so I can create this assignment here. I'm going to go up here to edit. And here is, of course, is where I would then put my instructions for my students here. I'm going to choose the point value. Okay. Under submission type, I can choose online if it's a file upload, for example. And it's going to be a file upload, so I'll make sure I choose that. I can choose how many submission attempts I'm going to give them. I'm going to give them 2 shots at it, maybe. Now here, making it a group assignment. If I click on this is a group assignment, this is where I have that choice. I can assign grades to each student individually. So if I think one student has done a little more work than others, you know, I can sort of leverage their grades that way. Or I can make it to where one size sort of fits all. So when I grade one assignment, it applies to everyone in the group. So that's how I'm going to do it. All right, I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to choose my group set again. There's my group that we created. But remember, you could create the group on the fly here if you wanted to, if you didn't create it first in your people menu. I could create one just right here. So once I have this ready to go, I can go down here and choose the due date for everyone. Just make it the 26th. Why not? Remember, if you don't put a specific time, AM or PM, it'll just make it the end of the day. And click done. Now, go ahead and hit save. So now I've created a group assignment. I could add a rubric here. So if I have a rubric already created, I could create my rubric. Maybe I've got a written rubric that we made last time for Regent, remember? In our last training. There's my rubric, right? And now I've got this assignment out there. Well, along comes Maddie McMiller. Maddie McMiller is in this in this class. He's part of group 1, you'll recall. And let's just say Maddie McMiller may not be the group leader. That's okay. Anybody in that group will be able to submit the assignment. So let's say that our group assignment is ready to go. We've created this collaboration and we've created our assignment like we did earlier. I can come out here to my modules and I can say, okay, class, we're ready to pull the trigger and upload our assignment here. So I'm going to go out here and choose this assignment. There's the rubric. There's the information there. It's going to tell me, keep in mind, this submission will count for everyone in this class. All right. So it's going to give me a little bit of warning that, by the way, when I submit this, I'm submitting it for everybody in that group. Okay. Because I created that in Google, I can go out here to Google. It'll open my Google Drive and allow me to find that group presentation that we made. I could upload it from my computer if I had it there. But there's our group 1 project assignment. I'm going to submit that. And submit the assignment. Because I submitted it on time, I get a little celebration there. And so now, this student has turned in their assignment and everything's good to go. Now, as the professor, I'm going to go back as the professor really quickly. I'm going to go out to my grades. And you're going to notice that when I come out here to my group assignment, upload, somewhere out here, there we go. There's my Regent group assignment upload file right there. I can see that Matt Student and Maddie McMiller have turned in something here. Okay. Now here's the cool part. Maddie McMiller turned this in. However, I can go into either one and go to the speed grader. So if I wanted to go out here, choose speed grader, I can come out here and start grading that assignment. Okay, so there it is. I can add my comments like I normally do here, just in the speed grader. I can do my highlighting just like we did last time when we were together. I can highlight things here and add comments for that. All right. I can add text. I can strike through stuff. Oops, I'm still highlighting at this point. Let me strike through some things. Comment on those. Freeform with my pen, my red pen or here, whatever, I can, highlight, comment, do all those things that I wanted to do. Whenever I grade a paper, I can view the rubric. I can choose this over just a little bit. I can choose how they did and add comments to the rubric there, just like we did last time. I can save that. I can add a grade here. Everybody gets an 85 in my class. And then down here, I can add my comments, and remember that wonderful little comment library that you can choose from if you have comments that you've already kind of want to save and use later. You can add those comments there and hit submit. And now either one of those students then, once that's been accomplished, you're going to see that if I go back to my grades and I go back to that particular grade, under my Regent group assignment, both students have an 85. So when I graded the one, it graded the both. Is that cool or what? Okay. So again, when you create a group discussion or a group item there, then if you choose not to grade it individually, remember, don't grade it individually, but grade it together. When you go out to grade one, it applies to both. Okay. Any questions over group work, assignments, and discussions?
Hey, Matt, me again, Darwin. I
Yeah.
wanted to be clear on that individual grading. So what you did, again, I was, again, fortunate to be able to do it, but then I had a student who admittedly said, hey, I didn't participate properly in the group. So when I went to change their grade, of course, I had to do the individual, but I
Yeah,
was
you have to
afraid
go
to
back
do that up front. If I do it up front, does that keep them, the one person, from loading from everybody? And I may not be
Oops.
careful.
No, I don't think so. You can go back and change it to individual grading, and you can go back and do that. Isn't it nice to have honest students? You know, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, the group knew they were supposed to,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
be
And
honest.
honestly, that's
Correcting
another thing
students.
too I've seen too, is that sometimes they will have, like, you might put two assignments out there where you have the one that's a group one. And then, I had a professor in grad school that we had a lot of group work. And what she did was she gave us all our own little rubric to self-grade ourselves, but then also rate our classmates. And she took a combination of those scores and she created a separate grade, just an assignment, just a no submission type assignment, where then she would put sort of like a part 2 of the grade out there too for the group assignment. And then she would give, so you had your group assignment, everybody received the same grade on, but then you might have some individual variance on how your classmates rated you and things like that. So that's a potential workaround for something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right. Yeah, so the Regent, there we go. So yeah, Canvas recordings are here. Okay, you got your information there. Just one other quick thing. I know we're going to talk a little bit about communication. I did want to show you all as well before we sign off for the day. I would recommend the student app very much. Oh, but before we do that, I wanted to show you that Message Students Who. So message, one of the communication features in Canvas that I really like is the fact that if you'll notice that if you need to make like an excused grade for a student or whatever, you can always just type in EX in their grade, EX, and it will automatically excuse it and take it out of the calculation. The Message Students Who is where you can send a message to your students based on some criteria here. So let's say on this Unit 1 writing assignment, you can see that there's a grading variance. I got a couple of excused, one of them hadn't been graded or whatever. If you go up to the column heading of any of these columns, you're going to notice that if I click the 3 dots, I can choose the Message Students Who here. And here, anyone who hasn't submitted yet, I've got one student and I can see who that is. I can send that student kind of a little warning that, hey, we're getting close to the deadline. You need to be sure and get this paper turned in on time. And it will send that student a message to their email and in Canvas messages. I can also message students who have not been graded. So anybody that hasn't received a grade yet, I can send them a quick little message that will go to their inbox as well. And if they scored more than, say, for example, a 70 or whatever on this assignment, I can see just those students who scored more than a 70, and I can send them a nice little congratulatory message telling them how great they did, okay, on that particular assignment. But notice that I can also choose who scored less than. I've got a couple of students there. And here I could send them some encouragement as well as, maybe some resources that they could tap into their Regent that might help them next time, in doing that. Thank you, Ashley, as well. So that is the Message Students Who. Make sure you had that as well. As far as the app is concerned, if you want to download the app is something that is free to download. There are, make this go down just a little bit so we can do it. The app, oops. There it is. So I'm using an iPad, by the way. So the app is out here. There's a teacher app and a student app as well. The teacher app is kind of limited, but if you wanted to go out to the app and make like an announcement on the fly, You can even grade using the speed grader. Okay. So if they are turning in things and you have your iPad sitting in your easy chair and you want to, or out by the pool this summer, or, or whatever your favorite beach is. So we had several whenever I was a young man in Virginia Beach. There I can go out there and start working on my grading, or if I forget to make an announcement in my class, I can quickly on the fly message students or make an announcement, if it'll just open up now, to allow me then that ability to communicate. Students, on the other hand, they can actually go out there and do a number of things too, including participate in discussions. They can even submit assignments and do things like that too. Doesn't look like it wants to pull up, so it's being a little bit hard-headed, I'm afraid. Anyway, I know I'm a little over my time, but I would invite you to go out there and poke around on the app. I think you'll find it to be very, very useful, particularly for just those on the fly kind of things. It is limited in the sense of that you can't create a lot of things. You can't create assignments and create discussions and things. I think you can create discussions, but you can't create assignments and things like that, or view the grade book as a whole, unfortunately, but you can do a lot of basic things. So with that, let me go back to our group work and collaboration. I'm going to take us to our end slide here.